The Chicano Movement, described by historians as a moment of ethnic empowerment and protest among Americans from Mexican descent, sparked during the 1960s. Prior to this period, the word Chicano had long existed as a derogatory term among young Mexican Americans.
However, by the 1960s, young Mexican Americans embraced the label, reinscribing it with notions of pride in one's Mexican heritage and defiance against institutions and individuals who practice or condone discrimination against Mexicans.
The resulting challenges and concurrent mentalities became the Chicano Movement, or as it is now known in recognition of the equally important participation of Chicanos, the Chicano Movement. During this period, large-scale political organizing occurred among the Mexican American community with a hitherto unprecedented urban energy.
An important event occurred when significant figures began to rise into political and social power, including but not limiting to people such as Cesar Chavez and Robert Kennedy. The Chicano movement has been broken down into four components: the youth movements against discrimination, the farm workers movement, the movement for political empowerment, and the struggle for control and ownership of land.
In the 60s, it happened in Los Angeles where Chicanos and Latinos took over the schools. Then it went to Cesar Chavez, where he fought for equality for the agricultural workers. And it continues in education because for generations, the Mexican American student has not been serviced well. For generations, the Mexican American has been disserviced. And it's a movement that still regains even stronger during these times, where characterization of the Latino and the Chicano has been negative.
An important figure for the farm workers movement, Cesar Chavez, a Mexican American and a prominent union leader and labor organizer, was born in Arizona, March 31st, 1927. His family lost their home during the Great Depression, resulting Chavez and his family to move to Northern California. Chavez dropped out of school in the 8th grade to help his family to go to work on the fields. Chavez founded the National Farms Workers Association, NFWA, in 1962.
His union joined with the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee in its first strike against grape growers in California. The two organizations later merged to become the United Farm Workers, the UFW.
Strangers in their own lands. The phrase strangers in their own land represented when Mexico lost land to America, and Mexicans were allowed to stay, but as of the 1960s, they were not recognized till then.
Since the Treaty of Guadalupe, from the war of Mexico against the United States, on which the United States basically took by force more than half of the Mexican territory. Since then, the Treaty of Guadalupe was supposed to give some rights to the Mexicans who stayed in the American side. But that treaty was never really respected, and a lot, if not most, of the Mexican Americans lost their land and they found themselves being strangers in their own land. Since then, the movement has ever been present of regaining, if not our soil, our dignity, and as equal members of the United States society.
Brother of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, born on November 20th, 1925, in Brookline, Massachusetts, aided and supported the development of the Chicano movement of the 1960s, fighting for Chicanos and taking a stand against the unjust education system and their actions to belittle Mexican American students.
Being confronted by Mexican Americans during Kennedy's plans to meet Cesar Chavez, fellow Chicanos of the Chicano movement sought help from Kennedy. After speaking with, complying, and supporting the Mexican Americans' demands for an equal education, Robert Kennedy put forth his compassion and absolute support towards the Chicano movement, allowing the Chicano movement and its people one step closer to their goal.
To finally be equal, one last task needed to be accomplished by the Chicano people.
Political power for their voices to be heard while they have the support of respected public figures.
Agitated, threatened, and depleted of their rights, labeled as second-class citizens, Chicanos began to form their political party. originating within a small South Texas town known as Crystal City, and began to spread Chicanos nationwide, challenging the political heart of America.
La Raza Unida, the United People, became the outcome of the previous tensions leading with the past figures, Cesar Chavez and Robert Kennedy.
Largely led by women, La Raza Unida campaign was directed towards working class Mexican Americans and the working class population, addressing bilingual education, regulation of public utilities, farm funding, and tax structure.
It defines these as the new awareness of farm workers' increased labor activism and growing visibility of educational and community needs.
From the movement came Chicano art, literature, and Chicano studies, as well as self-help groups, feminists, and a new wave of Mexican-American political and social leaders.
Not only did the Chicanos gain massive political relations throughout their endeavor, but left their legacy by taking their stand and leaving their mark throughout history.
Taking a stand against unethical legislation, taking a stand against absurd standards, and most importantly, taking a stand for the Chicano people.
The Chicano movement was a time of unity for all Mexican Americans during the 1960s. Whereas before many saw themselves as different, it wasn't until the Chicano movement that the Latino culture united and proudly identified themselves as being a Chicano.